In this example, we'll see how Crystal Smart Actions can be used to easily create a compliance theme deployer. So what does the compliance theme deployer need to do? Well, if we look at how our regulatory library is set up, we have mandates, sub-mandates, requirements, and ultimately it's these requirements that we want to assess in the business. So they exist in the library at the moment. Then in the library we'll create, or it doesn't have to be just the library, but typically in the library we'll create a compliance theme. And that compliance theme will be a grouping of the requirements. So it could perhaps be the entire regulation itself, or it might be a theme that goes cross-regulation, some kind of privacy theme, for example, which will have one or more requirements associated to it. And then for this theme, we need to decide which business entities we want to deploy that to. So we'll associate business entities to this theme object. So now we have the theme scoped. We have a number of requirements from the library, and we have a number of business entities we want to deploy to. Now, what we want the theme deployer to do is to do really four stages. So stage one is if the compliance theme assessment doesn't already exist in that business entity, we need to create it, otherwise update. The second step is if is to create the requirement assessment in the business entity where it needs to be assessed. Again, if it already exists, then we want to leave it alone. We don't want to deploy it. The third step is that for the compliance theme assessment we've created, we want to also associate that back to the business entity. This will allow us to do business entity viewing of theme assessments and requirement assessments. And then the fourth stage is to associate the requirement assessment we've created to the compliance theme assessment. Because obviously, automatically, they will have had their parent relationships, but not these additional associations. Now, if we were to do that with tools today, then typically we'd be looking at some kind of Java JSP or custom action, but written in Java. To do that, and it'll take us many days, weeks to deploy that. What we're going to do in the Smart Action is effectively create two reports. So one report to create the objects, and once those objects are created, we'll run another report then to do the associations. So let's take a look at it working in the system. So I'll just bring over the screen. So here's our Open Pages test environment. And what you can see is we've got a compliance theme set up already, and already scoped in one business entity, agency services, and we've associated two library requirements. And this is as simple as just clicking on the buttons to make those associations and then picking up the relevant requirements from the library. So what we expect now, so if we look further down, you can see that there's no underlying theme assessments or requirement assessments. That data doesn't yet exist. So if we go to Cognos and take a look at our reports, so the first one being the theme deployer to create. So if we preview the data, so we can see here we'll create a compliance theme evaluation in test theme demo, and that will be going into EMEA agency services. And then the two other ones are the requirement evals, one for each of these. So we've got a password character set length, and then about sharing passwords. And both of those are also going into agency EMEA. So if we go back to the scope, we can see we've got the password sharing, we've got the length one, and it should be going into agency EMEA. If I decide to change my scope, I've not created anything yet. So let's go and pick another business entity. And let's go for, it really doesn't matter, so let's go for Asia Pac Asset Management. So now the scope has changed. So if we could pop over to our theme deployer report and just refresh that. So this is what it will do. So automatically now you can see that we've also picked up the additional business entity. So we've now got two theme assessments to create, one in Global Financial Agency and one in Asia Pac Asset Management. And then for the requirement evaluations, we've now got the additional two. So let's remove that. I'll decide I don't want that additional one in there, so I can remove it. So the idea now of the theme deployer, if I just refresh that, you'll see what it's going to do, is that when we run this through a Smart Action, that those objects get created. And then the second part of it will be that the associations get made as per, so the business entity to the theme and the requirement eval to the theme evaluation. So let's go into our Smart Actions. Let's just filter on the custom ones. So we've got the ability to run the theme deployer, create and associate at one go, but I'm just going to step through it. So let's run the create version first. So start job. And then let's take a look at the execution history to see what this has done. It's already run. Okay, so it ran the report, which was the theme deployer create. It found 3 records, and the first one was requirement eval, second one requirement eval, third one compliance theme eval, and then it finished successfully. So that's what that did. So if we now go to the theme deployer create and refresh that report, we should find there's nothing left to do because that has now been created. So all the data is in the right place. So let's take a look at our compliance theme, see what it's done. Okay, so our theme now, you can see it has one underlying theme assessment, but what it doesn't yet show is those underlying requirement assessments. And that's because those requirement assessments haven't yet been joined back to this theme assessment. If I go to the requirements, we will see those assessment objects are there. So it has been created, but it needs to do that second level of association. So let's take a look at the second report. Show associate, and let's just preview this now. So you can see the association or associate records is the smart action, and in this case you can see a couple of things. So one is we've got the compliance theme assessment being linked to the business entity, agency services, and then we've got the requirement evals being linked back to the theme assessment. So let's go back and now run the second smart action in the scheduler, which is to do the association. And again, let's just take a look to make sure that's worked okay. So again, ran the report for associate, found 3 records, and those are the 3. So it's got the theme assessment to the requirement evaluation. So 2 of those, and then it's got the theme assessment back to the parent agency services. So now if we look at the compliance theme, it should all look good. So we have our scope as it was, but now we can see the underlying theme assessment and its underlying requirement assessments. So that's how we would go and do that initial scoping. But what if we then came back to the theme at some point and made a change? So for example, we now want an additional requirement. So let's come in and associate another requirement to the theme. Let's pick this GDPR one. So the theme itself now has an additional requirement, but that's not been pushed out to any of the theme assessments yet. If I go to my theme assessment, we should see the existing requirements. Let's take a look down, and you can see there are the 2 requirement assessments to be done. So that's all linked nicely at the moment. So we now need to rerun effectively the theme deployer. So to do that, we would ordinarily just go to our scheduler and run the single job that runs both the create and the associate report. So I'm going to run all this time, and let's just show you over in Cognos what that will do. So run all runs this smart action command to run a schedule. So the first schedule is the theme deployer create, and the second schedule is theme deployer associate. So we can join smart actions together as well using the run schedule. So I'm going to run the theme run all this time and do start job. And we can also monitor all these background tasks using the background process view here. You see here we've got theme deployer run all running. So the theme deployer create has successfully run. Just refresh this. And now we can see that the associate has completed as well. And then this run all will complete. So it's basically just create and run 2 schedules, and that will complete in a second. So while that's going on, if we just take a look at the theme now, so we can see that we'd scoped in this additional GDPR. So what we're now expecting to see is the GDPR one, which is this principles one, also deployed into EMEA agency services. So it didn't do anything with the 2 original ones, it left them alone. And it didn't create any new theme assessments because that was already there. So that's the idea of the theme deployer. So at any point in time, we can come and change the scope of the theme. So either add additional business entities, remove them, or add or remove requirements. And then when we run the theme deployer smart actions again, it will take care of synchronizing up for that missing data. So both creating the requirement evals in the business area and the theme assessments, and then linking them together. Now, the other thing I said is we were linking that theme assessment into the business entity as well. So if we take a look at agency services, what we should be able to do is see that compliance data now by that business entity. So you can see we've got one compliance theme assessment and we've got one requirement assessment. So this is looking at it by the rating, and then this is the requirement assessment. So if we went into one of these, for example, then you can see all of the data in there ready for assessment. So that's what the smart action does. So again, just back to the PowerPoint, just to summarize what was going on here. So from the theme itself, which is scoped by requirement and business entity, we're creating theme assessment objects, creating requirement evaluation objects, and then joining all of these together. So 4-stage business process, and that report to do that was implemented in less than 1 day, compared to traditionally what would have been a custom Java code, which probably would have been a number of weeks.